You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You're moving through a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You have just crossed over... okay. Anyway, you have just crossed over into the partially illuminated horizon zone. Submitted for your approval, Cody Marchikitis, a man already not playing with a full set of bocce balls when it comes to sanity, now pushed to the very boundaries of madness by the crashing of his laptop computer drive, and with it the destruction of his life's work, a trove of memories, and really cute pictures of his cats. What you're left with is a man more broken than a shattered teacup, facing the inevitability that the cup will never gather itself up again, locked in despair, unable to face the horrifying...
Jesus, you are such a downer! I've still got plenty of pictures and videos on my phone. I'm sure I can make something out of it. And besides, the whole point of this project is for me to learn haute cuisine, not to make a bunch of long-winded videos that nobody's ever gonna watch. And that has got to be the worst Rod Serling impression ever.
Well, okay then.
Well, everybody, it's true. My computer crashed and I lost everything, and I mean absolutely everything. It was so bad the hard drive was beyond recovery. So along with losing pretty much everything I've done since high school, I also lost the footage that I had saved up for 2 whole episodes. But I'm coping. Life goes on though, or so I'm told, and I decided to make a sort of catch-up episodes with whatever I had salvaged from what was supposed to be episodes 9 and 10, along with another exciting project, but we'll get to that in a minute. So episode 9 was meant to be in celebration of my birthday, but what's even more is that it was Frasier themed, which is my other favorite show about an eccentric psychiatrist. I thought the crossover would be very entertaining, and indeed it was. In formulating this idea, I actually discovered the 2 characters had a fair bit in common, such as being avid supporters of culture, opera, and the arts. Both are practicing psychiatrists in major US cities, and both have a particular penchant for fine cuisine. So I set out to find recipes from my book that coincided with Frasier episodes. So my first idea was the protein scramble for a birthday breakfast, as a reference to the Frasier end credits theme.
Hey baby, I hear the blues are calling, tossed salads and scrambled eggs. Oh my.
This also happens to be the first dish Hannibal ever makes for Will. But the even more interesting part is that I had an idea to make it a breakfast in bed, and completely cooked and filmed by somebody else, so it would be a total surprise to me. So my mother decided to take on the task, and what she came up with was pretty spectacular. Here we have scrambled eggs with some apple and Gouda breakfast sausage served in an open croissant, and a small side salad of greens with a light vinaigrette and sprinkled with champagne cheddar cheese. Ergo, tossed salad and scrambled eggs. Couldn't be happier with how it turned out. It's just extra infuriating because I took a long, and I do mean a long, time to teach my mother how to film and set up all of the shots necessary for this breakfast, only for none of it to be used anyway.
I'll just add that to my list of reasons to die.
Well, on to dinner. We started out the evening with the Zukovsky caviar platter, which was less of a recipe as it was a guide on how to assemble your own. In addition to the caviar, we also had egg salad, sour cream, and smoked salmon, which I smoked myself, cause I'm fancy. And of course, with any traditional Russian caviar platter, we had the cocktail blinis, which are small silver dollar pancake type things made from buckwheat flour, which are used to spread the platter toppings on. And naturally, some ice cold vodka, using the January snow to our advantage. The flavor of the caviar is incredibly subtle, but combined with the right toppings, it made for something very unique, elegant, and tasty. This recipe was inspired from an episode in which Frasier and his brother Niles get caught up buying black market caviar from some shady Russians and almost go to jail in the process.
It's not ours. We found it.
Along with the caviar platter, we also had the Roz Doyle cheese language cheese platter, which is inspired by Frasier's amorous radio producer who hails from Wisconsin and has a special cheese language she speaks with her family.
It's a brick of cheese. You know, like instead of saying, hello, how are ya? He said, hello, havarti. Someone else would go, oh, I'm Gouda.
Well, I just hate to see you like this. I camembert it.
Of course, as always, nearby Roz is the ever-persistent and incredibly inappropriate Bulldog.
Bulldog!
Bulldog.
Bulldog!
Bulldog! Funny piece of Hannibal/Frasier crossover trivia, the actor who plays Bulldog, Dan Butler, also makes a small appearance in the 1991 film Silence of the Lambs as an entomologist. Next up for our first course was the Beverly steak and kidney pie, for which we also made the bite mask pie crust as featured in the show. On Hannibal, this episode marks the unfortunate demise of the beloved forensic investigator Beverly Katz after breaking into Hannibal's house and discovering his little secret. Rude. However, on the lighter side of things, this recipe was meant as an homage to Daphne, the crane's housekeeper.
I'm a physical therapist.
Sorry, home physical therapist who does a lot of the same things that a housekeeper does, including cooking, which the crane men are never terribly fond of, as she has a habit of preparing bizarre, classic recipes from her homeland of England.
I'm bringing Grammy Moon's famous plum duff. Grammy Moon's famous sheep's head stew. Steak and kidney pudding. That'll be my shepherd's pie. So I'm going to try my hand at haggis.
Even Hannibal Lecter couldn't keep that woman's cooking down.
So for the pie, I took an idea from Niles.
Bake one large souffle and dish the portions out at the table.
The taste of the kidney was rather odd, and I couldn't say I was a great fan of its texture either. But overall, the pie was pretty good. And it used the same lemon and olive oil pastry that we did back in episode 2 to make the pie crusts. All in all, I might make this recipe again, but just keep the steak and not so much the kidney part. On to the main course, for which I selected the beef cheeks au poivre. Beef cheeks served with a creamy green pepper sauce, which for Hannibal is inspired by this brief moment. And for Frasier is inspired by this brief moment.
I didn't think I'd like beef cheeks.
Yes, Dad. Give them the gift.
So it works out. Alongside it, we had some flavorful golden mashed potatoes and some very pretty braised rainbow chard. I was incredibly pleased with how this one turned out. It was like a delectable, melt-in-your-mouth, tender pot roast, but even more rich and flavorful. And the green peppercorn sauce was a very unique touch, which rounded out the plate nicely. For dessert, I actually didn't take a page out of Hannibal's book, but rather from Frasier's. So I decided to make Cherry's Jubilee, which was inspired by a hilarious moment from one of my favorite episodes, in which Frasier and Niles purchase a restaurant together, and after a series of terrible and hilarious misfortunes, find themselves having to run the kitchen themselves. All of the chaos comes to a climax when, after adding brandy to the Cherry's Jubilee again, and again, and again...
Big blue flash. Cherries everywhere.
So I looked up a simple old family recipe that I had and made some minor modifications. And I made some of my homemade vanilla ice cream, which is also featured in episode 6. Now, just like in this episode, or at least what was supposed to happen, I wanted to serve this on a dessert cart, using this very nice and shiny skillet that I have, then serve the cherries over already filled dessert bowls. And of course, a nice big flambe for everybody at the table. It went off like clockwork. Naturally, it was delicious. And of course, for the final touch, no Frasier meal would be complete without some sherry. So that was the episode 9 that was meant to be. Rest in peace. Episode 10, however, was themed around Valentine's Day. Hannibal at its heart really is a love story, and there are several allusions to the heart during the course of the show. From Hannibal reciting a Dante poem depicting someone eating a heart, or the time he literally folded a guy up into an origami heart. I don't care who you are, that takes talent.
Valentine written on a broken man.
On Hannibal, the heart is used both as a metaphor for love and heartache, but also literally and deliciously. Now, we could wax philosophically about the nature of true love and what it is, but I think there's no better explanation for the nature of love itself than this moment here.
Is Hannibal in love with me?
Could he daily feel a stab of hunger for you and find nourishment at the very sight of you? Yes.
So naturally for this episode, we wanted to tackle any recipes that had to do with heart. First up is the heart tartare, served in phyllo dough shells, which to my great dismay, I don't actually have pictures of. Tartare is actually raw meat, which is minced very fine and mixed together with seasonings, oil, and other things such as onions and capers. This recipe is featured in Hannibal's Big Shindig Dinner Party from Season 2, and is one of the many hors d'oeuvres that the wary Dr. Chilton will not be partaking in. Our tartare was actually made from venison heart from a recent hunting trip. Together with capers, red onion, cornichon pickles, and olive oil, this appetizer was an incredible combination of savory flavors. Next up, we had the heart with sausage stuffing from pork hearts and sausage, once again provided by the good folks at Carnivore. It's also worth pointing out that that's where I got the beef cheek and the caviar from episode 9. They really do have everything, and I love you so much for it. Served on top of mashed potatoes along with the ají sauce, which is a spicy sauce made from Peruvian orange peppers. And finally, as a garnish, some tomato roses. So 3 recipes in 1 with that one. Overall, I was pretty happy with this dish, despite my overcooking the heart slightly in order to make sure that the sausage stuffing was cooked all the way through. But the combination of the heart, bacon, sausage, and ají sauce made for a spicy, savory dish that I'd love to take a crack at again, just to get it perfect. For dessert, I had to get a little creative since there's only so many dessert recipes in the book. But toward the back of the book, I found a recipe for raspberry coulis and decided to use it as a topping for some kind of dessert. Here we have vanilla lemon pound cake slices with a scoop of homemade rose petal ice cream, and of course, topped with our raspberry coulis. In addition, we also had a nice little fruit salad in heart-shaped bowls to start the meal, and some chambord as a lovely after-dinner aperitif. So all in all, a pretty delicious evening to celebrate the holiday of love. Just one final recipe before we go. Without a doubt, the most ambitious and complicated recipe in the whole of this book. The home-cured ham. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's happening. We are making our very own prosciutto. Now in the show, we briefly see part of this process happening with part of some guy's arm, and then it just seems to magically be done the next day. In reality, this thing takes about at minimum 10 months, and even then can stand to be cured for longer. So for starters, we needed a whole rear leg of pork, and 3 guesses where I got that from. Now this process first begins with this thing being completely buried in coarse salt, with at least an inch of salt on all sides. Then a lid with weights is placed on top, and it stays buried for 3 days per kilogram minus a day. Our leg weighs in at just over 11 kilos, which came out to 32 days, which at the time set us at March 13th as our unearthing date. Now once we unburied it, we need to wash it off with white wine and pat it completely dry with paper towels. Then giving it a complete surface rub down with a cayenne paprika spice mix. Then it's tied up with rope and needs to hang for a while. Most people that do this just hang it in a dry, cool part of their cellar, but I have 2 little monster goblin cats who would surely bring ruination upon this entire endeavor if it was left out. So like any normal person, I converted my closet into a curing chamber. What? Complete with a fan for circulation, a humidifier, and a thermometer and hydrometer to monitor and ensure we stay around 60 degrees, 65% humidity. We've just recently passed the 4-month marker, and after 6 months, we'll reach the next step, which is rubbing it down with black pepper and giving it a coating of animal lard, after which it will continue to hang anywhere from 3 to 10 months. So in future episodes, I will be providing updates on the ham's progress until it is ready to eat. Well, actually, we're already past that. You see, at the time I was recording that video, I was prepping for a surgery that I needed, which kept me in the hospital for 2 weeks. Then after 2 weeks of recovery, I found out I had an infection in the wound, which put me back in the hospital for another 2 weeks. So once I returned home, we were only a few short days away from the magic 6-month mark and the next step in this incredibly long process. Next step is to take our leg out of our curing chamber and give the cut side a rub down with black pepper, then give the entire surface of the leg a coating of animal fat. So once we did that, and then I remembered how I tied it up the first darn time, it was all ready to get put back into the curing chamber, where it can now hang anywhere from 3 to 10 months until it is officially ready to eat, which puts our minimum curing time at just before New Year's, at which point it'll be ready to be sliced and eaten and used for some of the recipes that I've still yet to do. Okay, now that we got that little update from the future out of the way, I'll let past Cody get back to finishing up his episode. So that is it for this catch-up episode of Hannibal and I. Catch-up, not ketchup. Thanks for sticking with me. I know this episode was less exciting than most. I'm Cody Marchikaitis. Remember always to stay courteous, and I will see you in the kitchen next time.